Well, I don't think you've ever had any doubt, but especially for our new friends, let me say for the record, that I teach so I can learn. So the primary audience for what we are about to learn together is myself. I hope you don't mind. You can't stop me at this point anyway, right? But I teach so that I can learn. I am the son of an educator. 37 years in public school, my dad was. When I retire, I will have lived 37 years as an ordained pastor. I always did kind of want to sync that up with my dad because he meant that much to me and was such a role model. And 37 years, I watched him be a public school teacher, and I watched him up early in the morning, so excited to get to another day of school and learn and learn and learn and learn. I teach so that I can learn. Thank you for learning along with me. I will be using the English Standard Version Bible. That is the Bible that we have in the pews in the sanctuary. It is not the official Bible of Good Shepherd. It's the one that we are currently using officially. But we, of course, are living in an age of biblical wealth. We have never had more good translations, and then now through the internet, more access to being able to technically study the Bible than ever before. So honestly, you can't go wrong. All to say that if you brought your favorite Bible and whatever else version is, it's the perfect version. Keep on using it. Follow along with me in any way that you care to do, because there is almost no such thing as a bad version of the Bible anymore. All right. First thing I want to say is this. The title of this class is Standing on Pisgah, Looking Forward to What God Has Next. And the first thing that I want to say about that is this. Children of God always have a next portion of their inheritance to enter into. I am, among other kinds of theologians, I'm a theologian of the cross because I'm a Lutheran theologian. I'm a pneumatic theologian because I'm a charismatic Holy Spirit guy. But also underlying that, I am a grace-forward pastor. Therefore, I believe that our God is lavishly generous and finds personal joy in blessing his children. Our fifth grandchild is due about a month from now, and I cannot already wait to lavish that most recent grandchild with all the goodness that I possibly can, monetarily, spiritually, relationally, in every other way, because there's nothing better. And just like Jesus said in Luke chapter 11, if you know how to give good gifts to your kids, my kids are fine, but better are my grandkids. It should have actually said, if you know how to give good gifts to your grandchildren, how much more does your Father in heaven want to give good gifts to you? All to say, I believe in a God of abundance. I am a prosperity gospel preacher. I absolutely am. Not very much monetarily, a little bit, but more, even vaster than that. Beyond, of course, money, but money is just the beginning of all the ways that God wants to bless us. Just the beginning, tip of the iceberg. You have a tremendous inheritance as a child of God. You're in his will. It's called a testament. There's a guy in this room who really would prefer, I say, that this is the blood of the New Testament, of the Testament, the covenant. It's to say you're in the will of the Father. He intends to make sure that his lavish promises, blessings to you, and overall manifestations of goodness come your way. And so that is the orientation I want see your life trajectory. I want you to see your life trajectory is on. I'm going from this portion of my inheritance, wow, to the next portion of my inheritance, whoa, to the next portion of my inheritance. When is this going to stop? It stops when God stops. That's when your inheritance will finally be at its end. The goodness of God towards you stops when God stops. So that's the first orientation I want you to bring into what we're going to share together. The second one needs to be right there next to it so that we have a fullness of perspective. So first, the children of God always have a next portion of their inheritance to come into. And secondly, the follower of Jesus is always on mission until the day that they graduate to heaven. Because Jesus said, you are salt and you are light. What the world needs to be more just, more merciful, more loving, and more compassionate, what the world needs to achieve that is more people like you. That's what Jesus said. And that's how I would say it back to you. You are the light of the world, Jesus said. You are the salt of the earth. What the world needs to be more of what God always intended it to be in a real practical, down-to-earth, yes, this is actually working out for people, is more people like you. So you being that significant to the purposes of God and the goodness of humanity and the fate of eternity means that we can't possibly be done yet being who we are and doing the things for the Lord that only you can do. So there's much more that God has for you personally out of lavish love and blessing, and there is much more that God needs of you because of the significance of your lives as followers of Jesus Christ. Next, what is Pisgah? And honestly, you got to just kind of pronounce that pretty accurately, or it could just get into a crass association. Pisgah, okay? Pisgah. What is it? First of all, it is a place. A geological location. Raise your hand if you've been to the Dead Sea. Yeah, I've been there with most of you there. And so if you have been to the Dead Sea, you have probably been within 3 miles of Pisgah, okay? So it's down there, and when you're at the Dead Sea, you see across it, there's a series of hills. We're going to call them mountains. You know, mountains are a relative term as far as elevations go. But for that area, they are high elevation, okay? And up in those hills, there are various peaks. One of those peaks up there is called Mount Nebo, and that's mentioned in the Bible. And then in the region that is the Mount Nebo peak, there's an even higher kind of peak that is a viewing place that is called Pisgah. So Pisgah is first and foremost a place. But secondly, Pisgah is a stage of life. And that's what we're going to lean into it most for as we think about looking forward to what God has next. I'm going to work with the premise that spiritually, Pisgah is a stage of life. It's a stage of life where God has brought you so far, and yet you have not yet reached your final destination. You know, if you're listening to this, we were just prayed over our dear friend Jackie Groff, who is getting ready to go from this life into the next vast stage of her eternal inheritance. But my goodness, just to use her as an example, the distance that God has taken his servant Jackie is going to be a real challenge when it comes to trying to remember her life honorably, because there's so much. I mean, how much time do you got? It's going to be a challenge to actually do honor to it because of the long ways that the Lord has taken Jackie. But I'm looking at a lot of friends and new friends and all people I know, and I can say confidently without knowing all the details by a long shot that the Lord has taken all of you a really long ways. And I don't think I could have done this class 10 years ago. When I was 54, I had to be 64 at least minimum. And I think the fact that I'm a person who is a post-stroke person who's had a stroke is also significant to all of this, because the Lord has taken me a long ways through that alone. Through that, it was a big deal, but it's only one deal of my life. But going through that has been huge to where I am today, but I still have not arrived, and neither have you. So Pisgah is a stage of life where the Lord has brought you a long ways, dear heart, but you have not reached your final destination yet. So therefore, thirdly, Pisgah being a geographical place, a stage of life, is also an opportunity. And that's how I want to embrace it personally, and I invite you to do it with me. Pisgah is an opportunity to inquire of the Lord. What else do you have for me? I prefer that you start with that question because of my theology of God's initiating grace, his lavish love, and his just delight in showing you goodness. So I would like you to ask with me, first of all, as we talk about the opportunity, what else does God want to give you and bring into your life? I would like to heighten your expectation that more of what God has for you is coming your way. And asking that question, then follow up with these questions. What else, Lord, do you require of me? I do believe that the Lord has expectations of us, not so that we can earn his love, but so that honestly we have an outlet for our gratitude. I want to have a chance to say thank you back to him, and serving him is the thank you outlet. And I don't think I'm done saying thank you, Lord, for all of your goodness. And I'm pretty sure you're with me on that. It's an opportunity. What else do you have for me, Lord? What else do you require of me? Is there one more vision to see? Again, those of you who have been the usual crowd for many, many years now with me know, and I haven't told this story for a long time, and I probably need to, but Kathy and I came to Sacramento in obedience to a vision that God gave to both of us simultaneously. It's quite a story. It's our story because it plopped me into your laps. But of course, we are wondering, Lord, is there one more vision that we are meant to see? Is there one more mountain that we are meant to stand on? Standing on the top of a mountain is a symbol, of course, of coming to a next place of significance. Now, all of us have been blessed to live significant lives already. And to the end of our days, the Lord will count it as significant because we love him. But I'm wondering if in a particular and a way that will kind of blow our minds, there might be one more place of significance that we are brought to, where we go, okay, this is beyond my expectation. I wonder if there is a beyond your wildest expectation point in your life still to come. I remember there was a dear saint that I used to visit years and years ago. You probably never saw him because when I was visiting him, he is beyond being able to attend on Sunday morning. He retired and then went to Africa for like 4 years to serve the Lord. Had all the money he ever wanted in the world, had seen the world as much, traveled the world and everything else, but he just felt called to immediately upon retirement, which meant into his later 60s and early 70s, to go to Africa, to a really scary place in Africa. And I mean, crazy, wild, and everything else. And of course, it was the thing that he looked back on his life with the most fondness. I don't know if you're going to Africa. But what I do know is this. Do not say, no matter what, I'm never going to go to Africa. I have made that mistake too many times. Don't do it. Do not test the Lord your God. So, I don't know. It might sing, I don't know. I don't think well, you know what? Who knows? Maybe there's one more mountain to stand on. Maybe there's one more assignment to finish. And if you're a good shepherd people, and I think most of you are, I appeal to you to be open to whatever next assignment he has for you in this church as it goes through one of its most important times. So these are not rhetorical questions, by the way. As I take my pulse, I can tell my heart is still beating. And as I feel my temperature, I can tell I'm still beyond room temperature. Therefore, the answer is yes. Yes to all those questions and other questions that we don't have enough time to ask. There's no retirement from following Jesus. And there is no time where you can say to God, by the way, Lord, I'm no longer available. Let me tell you something about the mistake I made as a younger pastor. Well, at least one of them. I'll just talk about one of them today. We don't have that much time to talk about all the rest. When I would meet people now my age, dang it, and older than I am now, and they would say things to me like, Pastor, I can see that you're all excited and you have big dreams for our church and you want us to go up to a next level of commitment and you're asking us all to give and be more for this church. I hear that, Pastor, and everything else, but I've kind of done my time. And I would go, I didn't know what to say, and so I wouldn't say anything. I would just judge them silently. You suck. I mean, I was like, really, seriously, give me a break. That was an overreaction. I think this is what those saints were saying, most of them, because obviously as their pastor, then I came to know them and know their hearts. I think what they were saying is the stage in life where I used to do the things that I always did, some of that has changed and I will no longer be doing that. But as I got to know them more and understand what they were trying to say, not very well, but they were saying, I'm going to be active in serving the Lord in my church in a different way than I have been previously. But I'm not done being available to God to use me. Friends, we are never done being available to God to use us. Amen? And that's why there's something next. And that's kind of cool, and that's exciting. So as I pondered these things from my own life and our life together, I asked the Lord, what parts of the Bible can be a tool in the hands of the Holy Spirit to shape us and guide us into this next part of the journey? And the Lord just gave me one word answer, and that was Pisgah. Pisgah. So I started flipping in the Bible to Deuteronomy 34, which we will look at here in a moment. But first, let me introduce our guide onto the Mount of Pisgah and to the one who will help us to see what God has next. And of course, that is Moses. Here's Moses' life in 4 acts. Number 4, his origins and his origin story. The thing that you learn when you study Moses for a really long time is he is an extreme person. His life is very extreme. And that makes him interesting, tricky, and a little bit hard to relate to because his life is so extreme. You have an origin story, and it is no doubt very interesting. I've never met anyone who doesn't have an interesting origin story. But Moses' origin story is ridiculous. I mean, he is born in a time where, once again, the world is trying to kill Jews because Jews are proof that God is real. Jews are proof that God is real. And the world that doesn't want God to be real, and Satan, who doesn't want God to be real, is always going to try to destroy Jews because the Jews are proof that God is real. Well, God, can you prove that God is real? I always go, this is the easiest thing in the world. They go, what? What about science? I said, well, what about Jews? They shouldn't be around. They're still around. God is real. So, of course, Moses was born at a time where people, once again, are trying to kill Jews. And so, they hide him from death. They put him in the basket. He goes down the river. He's picked up, by the daughter of a Pharaoh household, raised in Pharaoh, best education, best everything, golden boy, incredible, talented, handsome, up and coming, everything else, finds out who he really is. It's just, his origin story is absurd. And then the second phase of his life after origin is his formation years. For formation, what he does is he flees Egypt after murdering somebody, and he goes out into the boonies, and he marries Jethro's daughter, and he sits out there in the middle of the nowhere doing nothing other than keeping, sheep and livestock safe from peril and from dead animals. And in many ways, the livestock that he was protecting was important to this guy because he was a nobody. He went from being a somebody and everybody to a nobody for years. And the Lord just had to say, so how are you enjoying being a nobody, Moses? You okay with that? Whew, so extreme. Holy smokes. God, I mean, that's kind of rough. Then, of course, from formation to formation, his years of production. And who else in the Bible was like Moses? Nobody, not even close, in a class by himself. And then the fourth stage of his life, of course, was succession. Okay? Origins, formation, production, and succession. So what we are in this stage of life where, here's what I know about your origins. They stay with you more deeply than I ever realized. I am so the son of Helen and Bob, and I am so the son of Red Wing, Minnesota, whether I like it or not. And there's plenty of it I don't like very much at all. I in my hometown never got on the same page with each other. But at this time, you just have to accept that even though it wasn't good sometimes, God took what wasn't so very good and used it for good as a part of our formation. So I hope you've joined me in accepting whatever parts of your origin stories are the hard things to accept, because they don't go away, and we can make peace with them and just be thankful for the way we were formed, even though it was hard. So those are our origin stories. Our formation never ends. Okay? Our production shifts. The way that we serve the Lord and work for the Lord's kingdom and purposes shifts over time. And I've had the chance to watch that with great people of God. I think of John Shoup, which a lot of people remember, and others of you will never know. When I first came here, John was, in his 70s. Late 70s, but very vigorous. And so we would build houses for humanity. And John would be out there sawing, nailing, putting in long days, working like a crazy guy. Senior citizen for sure, but he could still help build a house in a really significant way. He lost that physical capacity. And I remember the time where he went from doing all of that. And John, for the first time in his life, joined a small group. He was not raised Christian. I baptized him. He had not had a lot of Christian influence, and he was a man's man, and I'll help with this, and I'll help build that, and I'll help build houses. I kind of leave the spiritual stuff to be his wife, and she was a spiritual giant. But John shifted his productivity into building things with his hands, to building his spiritual life up in the Lord, to ultimately becoming a spiritual influencer in this church. So the way that we manifest the life of Jesus and produce shifts over time, and then succession. We must pass down our legacy with great intention. So with that as an introduction, I am going now to turn to the Bible. And I'm going to start in Deuteronomy chapter 34, and of course, verse 1. Deuteronomy 34 is the last chapter of the book of Deuteronomy, and therefore that makes it the last words of the Pentateuch. Pentateuch is Greek for five. The 5 books of Moses. The Torah. Deuteronomy 34 is the last chapter in Deuteronomy, which means that these are the last words of the Torah, which means that they are all very important, and these are particularly profound. It says, "Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo to the top of Pisgah." Okay? He went from the plains, and boy, they are vast plains. They are it is flat in every direction for a really long time out there. And then all of a sudden, there's these hills which become very high hills, and that's what Moses did. He walked from that very flat, super low elevation, by the way. The Dead Sea is under sea level. So he went up, Nebo, and then what's the highest point on Mount Nebo? Pisgah. I'm going to just say kind of these Christian sayings. You can decide for yourself if they are cliches. If you treat them like cliches, I guess they are, but if you treat them like words of the Lord, I think they can be. If you stay where you are, you will keep seeing what you see. Okay? If you stay where you are, you're going to keep seeing what you see. Many of you are like me, are travelers. All of you, like me, are incredibly curious. And I know, and I've done this with some of you very personally, that we've been out sightseeing, and I've watched you go up a little bit further. It's like, don't walk over there. I don't need you to fall down and sue me, as we stand on the top of this mountain in Israel, wherever we were, or in Greece, or wherever we were. But there's just something inside of you that understands that if you want to see more, you can't stay where you are. If you want to see more of what is next, you got to do what Moses did. Moses wanted to see something beyond what he was seeing. So what did? He got higher. You go, yeah, duh. But stay with me. Moses needs elevation to get more revelation. Moses needs more elevation to get more revelation. Here is the secret to doing that in your life, in this phase of the life, to see what else God has for you. To go higher and see more, you need to go deeper. That's the secret. That's what a lot of Christians don't fully understand, is that our going higher is not trying to strive to reach more of God's approval. It's like, I got to work harder so that God thinks I'm okay. We know that we're better than okay. So we don't have to keep working to kind of get God's approval. He's not like your father or your mother, who no matter what you did was never proud of you or ever gave you approval. We have a good Father. He approves us through Christ. So we don't have to go higher to gain his esteem. The way that you go to where you go to stand in a place where you can start seeing more that God has for you is to go deeper. I think of the words of Jesus where he says, "Abide in me and I in you." That, friends, is the quest to higher spiritual heights and revelation. It's abiding in Jesus, which is very good news for all of you, because that's exactly what you are dedicated to do. All to say that I want to affirm you that because of your dedication to keep abiding in Jesus Christ, there is more revelation in that elevation in your life. I want you to expect that Jesus is going to keep showing you things. And I'm looking at you, and I've seen from many of you when what you are doing and experiencing elevated because you pressed more into Jesus. And that has brought you more of Jesus and the things of Jesus. That is still the quest. To see more, you got to seek more. People say, I would just love to just have to see the things that God has shown you, Pastor Todd. I would love to have the experiences that you describe you having in your life. And I always say, well, you can. What's stopping you? Well, you're a pastor. I said, yes, in spite of the fact that I'm a pastor, God has been that real to me. If you want to see more, you got to seek more. If you want to experience more, you have to go into the presence more. You choose the view. Okay? You choose the view. And here's a word of grace that is starting to mean for me as I live on. And that is this. Even as your physical capacity diminishes, your soul capacity can increase. And so, yeah, it's better to have more physical capacity and energy. Of course, yeah. The hand's still like, a little funky, okay? So of course, it's better to have more physical energy and capacity. But the good news is that your soul can be ever increasing. Therefore, the path that takes you to higher elevations, to see better and to enter into more, you still have it. It's as fresh, it's as young, it's as brilliant as ever before. Is there a combination of soul power and physical power? Yes. We can get so physically drained that all we can do is just kind of lay there and let God love us. And I wonder sometimes if that's not God's favorite stage in our whole life. You see, having been with many, many elderly people, like Jackie at this point in her life, I think she's ready to go, but I've just been with a lot of people that go, man, I wish I didn't just kind of have to lay here. And I understand. I'm starting to understand that better. And I wonder if that in some ways isn't God's favorite phase in our life, where it's like, I finally got your full attention where I can just lavish my love on you and you can't wiggle away to see what you got to do next. But our souls, our bodies ain't what they used to be, but our souls are still very vigorous. You had enough energy to get here today. What a blessing that is. That means that both physically and especially in your soul, you can press on. You can press on. Oh, that encourages me. So let's keep pressing the limits of our lives with God. Let's keep pressing the limits. On Mount Nebo, Moses climbs to the highest peak called Pisgah, which can mean, like everything else in Hebrew, several things, but I think the things that it means essentially in Hebrew is viewing point. He reaches a viewing point that is the best viewing point in that region of mountains and hills. And when he has reached that viewing point, here's what he sees. Deuteronomy chapter 34, still in verse 1, taking it to the next phrase. He went to the Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is opposite Jericho. Oh, this is big. He's up there, and he looks down, and the first thing that he sees is the Dead Sea. It's just there. But the first thing he sees of note beyond that is the city of Jericho. One more time, how many of you have been to the city of Jericho? I've been there with you, All right. It's still there. It's crazy. It's still there. We think that it's been there for as long as 10,000 years. It may be the oldest, most continuously inhabited place on the planet. Okay? Among other things, Jericho, which is still there, is a place where, as you pull into the place where I went with my tour director, you can buy fruit and other things and souvenirs and ride a camel. And some of you did. There are pictures that exist that I may or may not possess of you riding a camel in Jericho. First time I went to Israel, I took my mom, and she rode the camel in Jericho. And then my second trip, I took my daughter, and she rode the camel in Jericho. This fifth baby, we don't know if it's a boy or a girl, but I'm kind of hoping for a girl, in which someday, if I still live, I will take her to Jericho, and she can ride the camel. But beyond that, here's what Jericho is. Jericho is proof that it was all worth it. Remember how long it was in that wilderness? You tell me, how many years in the wilderness? 40 years. It should have taken 5 months. As if you're just moving from point A to point B to the point C, even with a whole lot of people, it should have taken 7 months. Took 40 years. Yes, I know it feels like it's taking a long time. You know why? Because it is. It really is. You're waiting, expecting, holding on to, wanting, longing, praying. How long, oh Lord? I know it is actually a long time, but long time is still a relative term, always. It's okay to feel it. I do too. But let's just keep some perspective today. It should have taken about 7 months. It was 40 years, okay? And it was 40 years of people not just saying, this is harder than I thought it would be, but God is closer to us than never before. And I have to say that this is the best experience of my life. You would think, but instead of saying that, they just complained unceasingly. And who was the object of all that complaining? Moses. Okay? I have never complained. Well, I tried. Early in my career, I would complain to the Lord about how awful these people were. And then the Lord had said, let me give you some perspective on that, and reread all those places where they were just horrible to Moses. So I don't care how great in God he was. He was a human being, although a really strange human being. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, well, much more. But I don't care how extraordinary he was or how otherworldly he was. I have to absolutely believe, and I think we can see in the text, that at some point he was really wondering, if not saying out loud, is this worth it? Is this worth it? Jericho was proof that it was all worth it, because right there, Jericho is the first city in what? The promised land. The promised land. The land promised to Abraham and to Isaac and to Jacob and their descendants. It was a theory. It was an idea. It was a concept. It was an abstraction. No more. There it is. I see it. The first major city in the promised land. They're going to get there. It was all worth it. I promise you that it's all been worth it. Okay? I promise you that it's all been worth it. Listen, Moses is not going to be allowed to walk the cities of Jericho. We're going to talk more about that. But the people are going to get to the promised land. Here's how the promises of God's inheritance are the answer to our prayers, the things that we have longed for, the things that we've cried tears in desire, asking God to do in our time, including revival and many other things. Listen, we are not going to touch each one through our lived experience. Okay? Not in this phase of life. We're not going to stand in the manifestation of the fullness of that desire being fulfilled, that prayer being answered. It does not work that way. But what we know is that while we're not going to stand in the manifestation of everything that we hope for, long for, pray for, and want, by faith, we are holding it right now. It's going to come. It's going to happen. Friends, what you have longed for, prayed for, worked for, it will be worth it. Jericho is the proof. It seemed like they were never going to get there. Now Moses is seeing it. It feels like it's never going to happen. It's going to happen. By faith, it's going to happen. Say to yourself in your soul, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I see it by faith. Because it has to happen or God is not God. It has to happen or God is not God. And God is God. Verse 1, the last part through verse 3. To the top of Pisgah, which is the opposite of Jericho. And the Lord showed Moses all the land, Gilead, as far as Dan, all Naphtali, the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, and all the land of Judah, as far as the western sea, the Negev, and the plain, the Jezreel plain. That is the valley of Jericho, to the city of palm trees, as far as Zoar. All that Moses was seeing was not a place that he was going to go in that phase of his life. He was not going to get there in this life. And that gives us a little time, we're right on time, to talk about expectations. This is what we can mentor young people in. You are just the right people. Not all of you, because some of you are too young. But most of you are exactly the right age for teaching those in their 20s and 30s the secret to a happy life. And that is managing expectations. That whole land that Moses was seeing is the one place he's not going to go in this phase of life. And here's the wisdom of it. Setting and managing expectations of what your life will be is the wisdom and the path to a destination called contentment. A godly stewardship of expectations is the path that will lead you to contentment. Okay? Think of my mom. My mom had a challenging life because she was married to my dad, who was a tremendous dad, an extraordinary, influential guy, just not an overly gifted husband, okay? So that being such a big part of her life and everything else, it was challenging, and like everybody else, she had challenges. Her daughter died, and my sister in a car accident, had all kinds of other things, a couple times of breast cancer, a couple of episodes of psychotic break through depression, had to be hospitalized. She had a real life like everybody else. But she had a goal, and that is to arrive at contentment. She kept a clipping in a cupboard that she had taped to the inside of a cupboard door by the Sufi mystic Cahill Gibran. And it said, I have sought contentment by limiting my desires. My mom was slightly a Buddhist, okay, just a little bit of Buddhist. But that is the great wisdom of Buddhism, is saying, listen, you got to manage expectations. And if you put too much expectation on what you're going to experience in this life, it will set you up for being extremely bitter and disappointed. And that is true. And the Bible definitely also says that, because all wisdom ultimately flows from God. Listen, we're all going to not get to some place we hope to go. Okay? I don't know what's still on your bucket list. I'm just starting to get serious about mine. And it's really, really interesting, because as I put together my places I'm still going to get to before I die, bucket list, I also hear that voice, and I believe it's the voice of wisdom flowing from God. It's like, Todd, you're not going to get to all these places in this phase of your life. So doesn't that spoil everything? I don't know. I'll let you answer that question for yourself. To me, it does not. Because I don't expect to get everywhere that maybe I want to go in one lifetime. I just don't. Nobody should. Nobody should. There's just some places in life that you're not going to get to. And here's another part of the reality. The time for it to happen, whatever the it is going to happen in your life, at least for some of us, has passed. And at this point, it's never going to happen. You say, but God can do anything. Boy, are you right. And I have seen shocking things happen to not very young people where they have experiences, really beautiful experiences, that they didn't dream they would ever have, and I would not have bet they've had. So no, I am not a man of small faith. I am not a man of not seeing the greatness of God. I am not a man that says all the surprises on the upside that God still has for me are over, not at all. But all the places that I might still want to go in this life, I'm not going to get to all of them in this life, and I accept that. And for me, some of the things that I love to do in life are just not going to happen anymore. For instance, I love coming to established churches and helping them to see the fullness of their spiritual potential as they move forward into the future. That's kind of what I do. I'm not going to do it anymore because it takes years. I don't force agendas on churches. Okay? Good Shepherd was doing just fine without me before I came, struggling a little bit. But listen, I wasn't the answer to Good Shepherd's whatever. I was sent here to serve and to lead, okay? But to do what I've done in my ministry with 2 churches now takes years, so that people are not forced and pushed and coerced or guilted or anything like that. I hate all of that. Listen, you can burn a church down and raise it up from its ashes and everything else. I'm not of that approach. All to say that what I have done with my life that has given so much significance to my life, I don't have time to do anymore. I'm looking at a dear individual that I love pretty much, and to that individual I say, wait till all your kids leave home. And you realize, I'm not going to be a day-to-day parent anymore. That time to be a day-to-day parent is over. That's life, right? You just run out of time to do that particular thing. And I think it's important to have a sense of acceptance so that you can be at peace. But this course is to help us to have perspective on the acceptance that it would be good for us to achieve without negating ongoing anticipation. Watch me up here and listen to me more carefully if you're listening to this. On one point is the journey into acceptance that is contentment in the Lord. It's a precious, precious, rarely achieved, beautiful place to be, and God wants you to be there. But along with acceptance is still the fact that you're sucking air and you're still above room temperature and you still had enough energy to get here today, which means that you still also need to have some anticipation of what else God has for you. Acceptance, anticipation, somewhere in the interface of those two things, we stand on Pisgah to see what is going to unfold. Isn't that exciting? What a blessing to have these insights from the Bible. The last thing that I will say related to that is about portionality. The mystery of human existence, which I have pondered for all my life along with people, is the portion that the Lord assigns to people in this phase of your life. Psalm 16 says that we all come into this world with a portion assigned to us from God. That portion is the life that God means you to live. And, of course, that portion is as unique as you are. It is as custom-made as you are custom-made by God. You all have a portion of what your life is meant to be. And one thing we know is that for all of us, this portion is going to include some measure of sickness, hardship, and loss. And what has just shaken me and challenged me and brought me often literally to my knees is the fact that Christian people, devoted people, faithful people, people dearly dedicated to God and dearly beloved to God, they all have this different portion when it comes to just how much sickness, how much difficulty, and how much loss they're going to have. Some have some have very little, if you're being honest with it, and some have so much that you just wonder why in the world does that person have to go through so much. Last thing I'd like to say today in session 1 is my comment on this. Portions, including difficulty, loss, pain, are as individual as individuals. Why? Why? To that very valid and very necessary question, my response is this, as one who has asked it and asked it and asked it. At this stage of my life, I am an all-or-nothing theologian when it comes to people's portions. Either my existence comes from God, is known to God, and I matter to God, or my existence is an absurd accident that all amounts to absolutely nothing. It's either one or the other. There cannot be a third choice, rationally, logically, and not even biblically. Certainly not biblically. It's one or the other. So which one? If you, like me, and you are an all-or-nothing theologian, you understand that your existence comes from God, is known to God, and you matter to God. So whatever those hardships are about, whatever they else are, is they were a part of your portion. They're just a part of your portion. Or God is not very directive of your life. Do as the Lord leads you. But I don't know how long it has been for me. I think it was during COVID when I couldn't see you or be with you. Yeah, it was during COVID, the worst of COVID. During COVID, I gave up. And I'd love to hear your story. If you want to tell me your story, if you've had this story, maybe you're at a very different place, and that's great. But it was during the depth of COVID that I just gave up. And what I gave up was trying to understand. I just gave up. And that may be a weakness in me. That may be I ran out of energy. That's a thing more and more these days. That may mean that I just lost something that I used to have or whatever. It could mean a thousand different things. I just know that I did. I gave up trying to understand, to try to analyze everybody's portions. Why does this person have A, B, and C, and this person has something completely different, and they all love Jesus. They all only want God's glory. They all seek to be faithful. They all are the best people who deserve only the best things that life can give them. And that's really true. Why are their portions so different from one another? And when they ask me why, what am I going to say? I decided I'm not going to try to understand anymore. I decided to do two things, which, by the way, this hymn was one of Pastor Ron Thorson's, if you remember Pastor Ron, one of his favorite hymns, which says so much about that tremendous man. It's the hymn, Trust and Obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be what? To be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey. When we realize that there's more, but that this phase of life is not going to be everything that God has for us, where you can stand between that synergistic relationship between acceptance and ongoing anticipation. When you can realize that you're not going to stand in the middle of every desire fulfilled, but you are still going to actually possess by faith every promise promised. When you understand that the path of full understanding is not achievable in this life, but will be ours in the next. When you give up trying to understand and decide to become an all-or-nothing theologian where my existence comes from God, it's known to God, and I matter to God, then what do I do from here as I stand in this phase of my life on Mount Pisgah? If you'd like, and you sang along, keep going. And if you're listening and you sang along, or at least you're still listening, here's a formula to go forward and be happy. Trust and obey. There's no other way to be happy in Jesus. And happy in Jesus is an indelible part of his destiny for you. That's session 1 of 7 sessions. Thanks for coming this far, especially those of you who are listening. Join my friends and I next time we take this journey. Till then, forward.